Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and former senior special agent at the U.S. Secret Service and former special assistant U.S. attorney Christopher McClinic. Christopher, have you ever done this before? Followed somebody, a former government official, like this?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Katie. Absolutely not. I've never followed a government official, never set up a surveillance on a government official. I never felt that it was necessary to set up a surveillance on a government official. And while I'll stop short, with all due respect to U.S. Attorney McQuaid's opinion that it was overkill, to me, overkill equates to an illegality. And I don't think that's what the case was here. I will say it was a bit extreme.
There were threats to President Trump's life, obviously 2 assassination attempts. Does that warrant following the former FBI director? I mean, even if you were being if you were being abundantly cautious because of the environment that Donald Trump had faced, would that mean following the former FBI director? Would it justify it for posting a picture of seashells? Christopher?
Candidly, I would have just made direct contact with the man and gone on from there and just started the investigation and started the interview from there. But as I said, to me, overkill equates to illegality. And that was not the case here. They didn't violate his rights by surveilling him. I just don't think it was the best course of action in regards to this investigation. I think a lot of it has just went a little bit overboard. A director of the FBI shouldn't have made such a statement. Admittedly, 8647, we've come to realize is a rather benign term. It's on coins, it's on bumper stickers, it's on T-shirts. To equate it to the actual threat of an assassination of a president is a bit much. It's extreme.
Especially
the Secret Service has had to deal with this type of issue before.
Yeah. I mean, especially from the former FBI director, who you can easily just, interview, who they know. The Secret Service has the statement: it will vigorously investigate any individual, regardless of position or status, that may pose or be perceived as a threat to any of our protectees. Given that, and given what Christopher just said, Lisa, there are a number of folks driving around with bumper stickers that say 8647. Are we to understand that the Secret Service is out there secretly following each one of those individuals because they perceive them as a threat to the president?
Katie, I would hope not. You and I have talked about the fact that 86 is a term that is often used at restaurants to talk about killing in order, not something that actually means the murder of an individual. That having been said here, I agree with what Christopher said, that the proper thing to do here for the FBI would have been to make contact with former Director Comey and interview him right away, as they did later on upon his return from North Carolina to his Washington, D.C. area home. He was more than cooperative in giving them some of his time and talking with them. What concerns me, though, a lot more than whether
pretty stunning stuff, right? People who often worked in the FBI, in the CIA, Secret Service, all of that. Some of them have left. Some of them have been forced out. Some of them have been told, quit or you'll be fired. Some of them have been told, do this thing which is unethical, maybe even illegal in some cases. And rather than do it, they preserve their character and integrity and left. And it's just really important to see that these people who have been in these positions of authority and prominence, positions that are supposed to be, and certainly have historically been perceived as nonpartisan, at least internally. The CIA has done evil stuff abroad. But the whole point is that it's not supposed to be perceived as partisan internal to American politics. Now all of a sudden you see Trump weaponizing these forces, and it's forcing people to come out of this bubble of nonpartisanship and speak out. And it gets even worse here as Trump not targets both.
I want to bring in NBC's Ken Delanian in Washington. Michael Schmidt is an investigative reporter for the New York Times who has the new reporting on Comey. He's also an MSNBC national security contributor. Ashley Parker is staff writer at The Atlantic and an MSNBC political analyst. Okay, Michael, we learned back in mid-May that Comey had been questioned by the Secret Service about a social media post that showed shells arranged in the numbers 8647, which Trump allies said was a threat to 86, the 47th president. Comey denies that, of course, but spoke to the Secret Service at least twice. Typically, right, that would have ended it. And what happened next?
So the night that Comey posted that and took it down, he was interviewed by the Secret Service, and he explained to them that he didn't know that the arrangement of the seashells had a violent connotation, that he had no intention of harming the president. Former Secret Service officials told us that at that point, given who Comey was and the fact that he had no violent history, that he was the former head of the FBI, that would have been the end of any sort of Secret Service investigation. But what happened was the following day, the Secret Service had Comey and his wife, Patrice, tailed by undercover law enforcement authorities that followed him as he drove home through North Carolina and Virginia to his Washington area home. At the same time that the authorities were doing that, they were tracking electronically his phone to understand exactly where he was. And these are two highly invasive tactics that former Secret Service officials told us are basically only used in the most extraordinary of circumstances when they believe there is an active threat to the President of the United States. On top of all of this, Trump himself was in the Middle East at the time.
So he wasn't even anywhere where he could have been gotten to by anyone who wanted to do him harm. But what is the Secret Service saying, Michael, about why they even took these steps in the first place?
Well, after our story came out, they put out a statement that essentially said that they have to take extraordinary, or they didn't use the word extraordinary, but they have to take measures that they believe they need to take because there are so many threats against the President of the United States. Indeed, there have been 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump in the past year. We're coming up on the anniversary of one of them, of the Butler shooting. So, look, the Secret Service is in a highly scrutinized position where they have had severe, real threats against the President of the United States. But through our reporting and talking to different folks that understand how these types of situations are normally handled, this appears to have been an overreaction to what was not truly a threat to the President of the United States. And it raised questions about whether the Secret Service had done this, had taken these extraordinary measures to follow Comey, both physically and electronically, because he was someone that Trump has constantly said he wanted prosecuted. Trump has spoken at length publicly about that. He tried to have the Justice Department investigate him during his first term. Comey has been under criminal investigation multiple times. He has been the subject of a highly invasive and unusual IRS audit that came after Trump had told his then chief of staff that he wanted to get the IRS on Comey. So Comey has been under a massive amount of scrutiny, in part because of what Trump's critics say is Trump's efforts to have that happen.
So, Ken, let's talk about what NBC News has learned about both Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan being under criminal investigation. And we should say, again, they've been investigated before. They were investigated by Special Counsel John Durham. They've been investigated by the Senate. By the way, that report, signed among other people by then Senator Marco Rubio, they found nothing warranting charges. So what's the justification now?
So in the case of Jim Comey, Chris, we have no idea. In the case of John Brennan, we did learn that CIA director, the current CIA director, John Ratcliffe, made a criminal referral to the Justice Department, and that came after he released an internal CIA review of the process behind the 2017 intelligence assessment, concluding that Russia tried to help Donald Trump defeat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. The review didn't dispute the assessment's conclusions, but it criticized how Brennan handled some aspects of it, and it appears the referral raised the question of whether Brennan lied to Congress when he discussed his views on the so-called Steele dossier in 2023, which, unlike most of his congressional testimony on this issue, would be within the statute of limitations. Now, I got to say, the CIA review does not support that allegation, and Brennan and his allies say this whole thing is a dangerous example of how parts of the intelligence community and the Justice Department.
That's what senior aides tell me, and there is real anger here as to how this went.
Yeah. Well, and Jonathan, we got to go to break here, but just really quickly, it bears repeating and underlining that Pete Hegseth has had a history in his short term as a nominee and then the SecDef of exasperating people inside the White House. Again, lying are certainly not being forthcoming about the problems that he had in the past, about court documents. I mean, surprising the Trump transition team time and time again. Then doing it again with Signalgate. I mean, you talk to people inside the White House, like I know you had, and they'll say, we had a great 2 months. And we controlled the agenda. And then Pete Hegseth screwed it up with Signalgate. And now here we have it again. We have the president passing a bill. We have the president, having strikes on Iran. The president now standing up to Vladimir Putin. And what happens? We have Pete Hegseth going off on his own, making this policy decision that Donald Trump is now reversing.
Yeah, and you ticked through just a few of the examples that really exasperated Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and others in the White House, tired of some of the mistakes from Hegseth. Now, look, Hegseth is very popular among the MAGA base due to his time at Fox News, also because the bruising confirmation fight for so many in the Trump base was reminiscent of the Kavanaugh fight in the Supreme Court. We kept hearing that at the time. So there is affection there for him. But that only gets you so far. If you continue to alienate the commander-in-chief, your time in that post may be limited. Trump loathed to fire people so far this time around. You know, National Security Advisor Walls, the one exception here. He wasn't popular in most Trump circles. But right now, I think that, Hegseth is on, a short leash, if you will, from the Oval Office, that these kind of things got to stop happening.
All right, coming up, we're going to get an update on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza from a member of the International Red Cross and a doctor who recently volunteered at one of the few functioning hospitals that...
What this really demonstrates is that people have quit on Trump. Again, you don't just quit on the commander-in-chief and a person that you've served for even by formally leaving the job. Plenty of generals have retired. They didn't quit. They retired. They didn't quit. But you quit on the commander-in-chief when you lose confidence in them. And so generals, people who have been in the FBI, the CIA, other bodies that are entrusted with security of the country in some capacity have said, look, I've never even worked under Trump directly, but I've always supported the current president as a matter of patriotism and professionalism. Because as a retired top official, my voice matters and what I say is impactful. And I understand my power, so I don't make partisan statements very often. Certainly not, in front of giant microphones. But because of Trump's actions, I must quit on him today and let the world know that what he's doing is unethical, it's not typical, and it's corrosive to democracy.